Your network is probably dead, and the worst part is that your dashboard does not know it. Your dashboard can show signups going up, downloads going up, new users going up. It can even show early activity. But there is one metric almost nobody looks at. How many times a user came looking for value, and the network failed to deliver it. They open Uber and there is no car. They enter a marketplace and there is no supply. They post in a community and nobody replies. They open a dating app and there is nobody relevant nearby. That is a zero. A zero is an unsatisfied request, and every zero destroys trust. Every zero teaches the user that coming back to your product is probably not worth it. That is the brutal problem with networks. From the outside, they look like they are growing. On the inside, they may be dying. While you celebrate registered users, your product may be accumulating invisible disappointments. And a network that disappoints a user twice rarely gets a third chance. That is why this video does not start with "What are network effects?" If you need that definition, this video is probably not for you. The useful question is different. Does your product have a real network, or does it only have traffic disguised as a network? In this video, I am not going to summarize the cold start problem by Chen. That would miss the point. What we are going to do is turn the book into an operating audit, a way to look at your product, your marketplace, your community, or your platform, and ask whether you are actually building network effects, or whether you are just paying for acquisition to fill a leaking bucket. We are going to work through 3 playbooks. First, how to audit whether your network is real or imaginary. Second, how to build the first atomic network, the minimum unit where the network can already sustain itself. Third, how to scale without killing the network you just built. The promise is concrete. By the end of this video, you will be able to look at your product and answer 3 uncomfortable questions. 1. Whether each new user increases value for other users. 2. What minimum number of users your network needs to be alive. 3. When you can scale without manufacturing zeros at national scale. Because in network products, growing before you have density is not ambition. It is an elegant way to destroy retention. The popular belief says that the value of a network grows with every user. That sounds good. But at the beginning, the real mechanics are usually the opposite. Below a certain density, every new user enters an empty network. They look for value, do not find it, get disappointed, and leave. The network does not help them. The network hurts them. That is what we can call anti-network effects. Before a network becomes an advantage, it is a debt. And that debt is paid with liquidity, density, repetition, and trust. This is the classic mistake. A founder sees that the model could have network effects in theory, so they raise capital, buy users, launch in many cities, open many categories, do PR, and celebrate downloads. But they do not build enough density anywhere. Result: many scattered users, many empty experiences, many zeros. And then the product dies with good marketing. The critical frontier is not the famous tipping point, as if the network suddenly exploded by magic. The critical frontier is lower and more brutal. It is the survival threshold, the point where the network stops inevitably collapsing, even if it is not dominant yet. This entire video is about that. How to cross that frontier without dying in the attempt. This book does not compete with 7 Powers. It complements it. 7 Powers tells you that network economies can become a moat. Chen shows you the first 24 months before that moat exists. Platform Revolution gives you the academic design of platforms and 2-sided markets. Chen puts you in the trenches: fake accounts, subsidies, manual supply, parties, invitations, geographic constraints, and manufactured liquidity. 0 to 1 tells you to build a monopoly. Chen tells you something more operational. Before dreaming about monopoly, you need 15 drivers in a specific radius so the estimated arrival time drops. The innovator's dilemma explains why the incumbent does not see you coming. Chen explains why you can still die, even if nobody sees you coming. And good strategy/bad strategy gives you diagnosis and guiding policy. Chen gives you coherent action for one very specific type of product, the one that starts out useless by design, until enough of the right people show up at the same time. That is the angle. We are not talking about growth. We are talking about network survival. First playbook: audit. Whether your network is real or imaginary, a large community is not necessarily a network. A marketplace with users is not necessarily a network. A social app with signups is not necessarily a network. A network exists when each new participant increases utility for other participants, and that is measured. It is not declared. This is the most expensive mistake in the early stage. Confusing traffic with a network. If your product does not have a real network, all the capital you invest in growth evaporates. You are filling a leaking bucket. That is why the key metric is not only how many users enter, it is how many times the product fails them because the network is not there. That is the zero rate. How many times someone opens the product looking for value and does not find it because the network is still empty, scattered, or poorly balanced. If you do not measure that, your dashboard is lying to you. You can see growth, but not see death. Slack is a useful case because it destroys a common fantasy. Before Slack, the team came from Glitch, a game that had money, talent, and community, but did not work as a business. What they learned afterward was more important than the original idea. Slack did not become a real network because it had users. It became valuable when a team reached a minimum density of usage. In practice, two numbers mattered: a team of at least 3 people, and enough message exchange for the product to stop feeling empty. Below that threshold, Slack could feel like just another tool. Above it, it became the place where work happened. That is the kink, the point where retention changes regimes. Before the kink, you are pushing a tool. After the kink, the network starts pushing itself. That is what you need to find in your product. Not total users, not downloads, not signups. The point where utility changes because there is enough density. Here is the test. First question: what is your zero rate? How many times does a user look for value and the network fails? If you do not measure it, you do not know whether your network is alive. Second question: is there a kink, a density or usage threshold where retention changes regimes? If your retention is flat regardless of density, be careful. Maybe you do not have a network. Maybe you have a tool. Third question: does a new user improve the experience of existing users? If the honest answer is not directly, you have an audience, not a network. Fourth question: does your growth increase utility or only increase noise? Because many networks die not from lack of users, but from too many wrong users. Spam, saturation, irrelevant content, low quality supply, demand with no real intent. That kind of growth does not strengthen the network. It contaminates it. The common mistake is using vanity metrics as the North Star. Total signups, monthly active users, downloads, visits, followers. None of that distinguishes a living network from a dead one. Google Plus reached a massive number of registrations, but that did not turn it into a dense, useful, recurring social network. That is the point. A network does not live because many people have an account. It lives because enough of the right people interact in a way that increases utility for others. Practical action. Replace your main dashboard. Remove active users as the king metric. Add zero rate by cohort. Add density by micromarket. Add an active search for the kink in the retention curve. For 30 days, do not ask, how do we grow? Ask this: where does the network become useful, and where is it still empty? If this playbook made you doubt whether your product has a network, good. That doubt is worth more than your next acquisition campaign. Second playbook: build the first atomic network. The atomic network is the smallest network that is stable and can grow on its own. It is not the total market. It is not the TAM. It is not the big vision. It is the minimum unit where the network already delivers value without you having to push it all the time. For Zoom, that unit can be 2 people. For Slack, a small team. For Uber, enough active drivers in a specific zone. For a community, it can be a reduced group of members who post, reply, and come back. The early goal is not to acquire 10,000 users. The goal is to activate the right users in the same micromarket at the same time. Density beats volume. 100 users in one room are worth more than 100,000 scattered across the internet, because the 100 find each other. The 100,000 may experience zeros in parallel. The cold start is not solved with reach. It is solved with restriction, geographic restriction, invitation restriction, vertical restriction, use case restriction, community restriction. This feels counterintuitive, because every founder wants to open the product, grow, capture demand, and prove market size. But an early network does not need size. It needs density. If you open too early, you dilute the experience. If you launch nationally before you have one living zone, you are not scaling. You are multiplying empty spaces. That is why the right question is not, how many users can we get? The right question is, what is the smallest space where we can become inevitable? A city, a campus, an industry, a neighborhood, a building, a team, a narrow category. The more restricted the beginning, the more likely real density becomes. Reddit is a good example because it breaks the clean aesthetic of startup books. At the beginning, Reddit was not a vibrant community waiting to bloom. The founders had to manufacture activity. They posted content. They populated the front page. They used fake accounts. They created the feeling that something was happening. That may sound inelegant, but operationally, it makes sense. In an early network, if the supply side is empty, demand does not return. And if demand does not return, supply never appears. Someone has to break the cycle. That work can be manual, subsidized, concierge, temporarily fake, or non-scalable. It does not matter. What matters is that it creates enough initial liquidity for real users to start filling the void. The lesson is not create fake accounts. The lesson is more serious. The supply side is subsidized, automated, or simulated until organic demand can sustain it. It is not cheating. It is the cost of turning on the engine. In two-sided marketplaces, there is an operating mantra that matters more than almost any slide. Supply, demand, supply, supply, supply. Supply is usually the physical constraint of the network. If supply is there, demand comes back. If supply fails once, demand does not return. And if demand does not return, supply has no reason to stay either. That is why many platforms die at the start. Not because the idea is bad, they die because nobody did the dirty work of creating liquidity. You have to recruit supply. You have to subsidize supply. You have to curate supply. You have to guarantee availability. You have to do things that do not scale, and you have to do them until the network breathes on its own. The common mistake is chasing volume before density. Doing national marketing when there is not yet one single zone, one vertical, or one community where the network works without subsidy. Every acquisition dollar outside the initial micro-market manufactures zeros at scale. The practical action is concrete. First, define your atomic network in a number. What is the minimum stable unit of your product? 2 people, 3 users, 15 drivers, 100 active members, 1,000 specialized sellers. The number depends on the product, but if you cannot write it down, you cannot build it. Second, choose a hyper-restricted micro-market, not the biggest market. The market where density is achievable with your current resources. Third, manufacture liquidity without shame, subsidies, manual work, concierge, owned content, invitations, curation. Everything non-scalable is allowed until the network breathes on its own. Fourth, create an exit criterion. The atomic network is ready when you remove the subsidy and activity does not fall. That is the only test. Not press, not signups, not downloads. Sustained activity without artificial life support. Third playbook, scale without killing the network. Scaling is not repeating the launch at a bigger size. Scaling is replicating atomic networks, one by one, while protecting the hard side that sustains the system. This part is critical. In every network, a minority does the heavy lifting. On Wikipedia, a small fraction of editors sustains a huge share of the activity. On Uber, a portion of drivers sustains a disproportionate share of rides. In communities, a small group posts, replies, moderates, and keeps the place alive. That is the hard side. And if that side leaves, the other 99% has nothing to consume. The network collapses. Scaling badly means 2 things: diluting density or breaking the economics of the hard side. Both kill networks. Uber is one of the best cases for understanding this. From the outside, it looks like a demand problem. Get more riders, more downloads, more usage. But in reality, much of the system depends on the hard side. Available drivers, in specific zones, at specific moments, with enough quality and response time. When Uber tried to artificially scale part of its supply with vehicle leasing, the signal was clear. Manufacturing supply with capital can accelerate expansion, but if the economics do not sustain that supply, the system degrades. The hard side is not manufactured with money alone. It is recruited, subsidized, professionalized, retained, protected, and above all, measured as a survival metric, not as a decorative metric. A marketplace does not scale when it has more users. It scales when its hard side replicates with quality in each new micromarket. The case of Airbnb versus Wimdu is the perfect climax. Wimdu raised a lot of money, hired fast, got many listings in a short period of time. From the outside, it looked like it had everything it needed to crush Airbnb in Europe. But it lost. Why? Because in networks, visible size is not always the real advantage. The defensive moat was not simply having more listings, it was having a better hard side, more density, more quality, more trust, better experience, more repetition. A network does not win because it is bigger in Excel. It wins because when the user arrives, they find value, and they find value consistently. That is what a competitor cannot copy with a hiring campaign. They can buy signups, they can buy inventory, they can buy attention, but they cannot buy already formed real density without paying a brutal cost. That is why, when two networks compete, the winner is not necessarily the one with more capital. The winner is the one with the better hard side. The common mistake here is the Big Bang launch, massive PR national campaign, big announcement, many scattered signups. That works for products where value does not depend on other users. But in network products, it can be dangerous. Because if you launch in many places without enough density, you are not creating one big network. You are creating thousands of weak networks, each with little supply, little demand, little repetition, and many zeros. Traditional marketing applied to a network product can become an accelerator of disappointment. That is why you do not scale when capital is available. You scale when your current atomic network passes the test of sustaining itself without subsidy, and when you have a documented playbook to replicate it, market by market, zone by zone, vertical by vertical, never nationally just because the budget allows it. The scaling criterion has 4 rules. First, you do not scale when you can pay for users, you scale when you can replicate density. Second, you do not open new markets until you understand what made the first one work. If you cannot explain why an atomic network survived, you do not know how to replicate it. Third, asymmetric budget. 90% of your retention energy should go to the hard side, the critical supply, the creators, the drivers, the editors, the moderators, the people who sustain utility for everyone else. Fourth, watch carrying capacity. When noise exceeds value, the network dies from its own success. Spam, saturation, trolls, bad supply, unqualified demand, irrelevant content. Growth without governance is not growth. It is entropy. Networks are not pure democracies. They require rules, and someone has to enforce them. Let's close the logical chain. First, your network is born dead, not because your idea is bad, but because without density, every new user can experience disappointment. That is why you measure zeros, not just signups. Second, there is only one way out at the beginning. Restrict. Do not expand. An atomic network that sustains itself without subsidy is the first proof of life. Third, scaling is not amplifying. Scaling is replicating. Atomic network by atomic network, market by market, while protecting the hard side that sustains the entire system. That is the difference between growth and network. Growth can inflate the dashboard. A real network increases utility. And if utility does not increase with each right user, you do not have network effects. You have acquisition, you have activity, you have illusion, but you do not have a moat. This week, make 3 moves. First, add the zero rate to your dashboard. Define what an unsatisfied request is in your product. On Uber, it would be opening the app and not finding a car. In a marketplace, searching for supply and finding nothing relevant. In a community, posting and getting no reply. Start counting those moments by cohort. Second, write down the number of your atomic network, the minimum stable unit in one concrete number. If your team does not agree on that number, you do not have a network strategy, you have an acquisition strategy. Third, run the subsidy test. Choose your best micro market, remove the artificial push for 2 weeks, and see whether activity holds. If it holds, you have a network that is starting to breathe. If it falls, you did not fail. You found the truth. And that truth is more valuable than scaling blind. I want to read numbers, not opinions. What is the minimum stable unit of your network? 2 people, 3 users, 15 drivers, 100 active members, 1,000 sellers. What is your number? If you cannot write it in one line, there is the problem. Your problem is not acquisition, It is density. Leave it in the comments. We will dissect the good ones. Playbooks de Caja turns strategy books into executable manuals. Less theory, more decisions. See you in the next playbook.